One of the things that a lot of you asked me about was how exactly the Navy worked, what it meant to be a midshipman, why he was having trouble making lieutenant. So I thought I'd go over that fairly quickly because it's also important when we get to persuasion, and also important in terms of Jane Austen's own experience with her brothers. Midshipmen were basically officers in training. They came from various classes, not that many from the lower classes, many from the middle classes and the gentry, and even some from aristocratic families. They often went to sea as early as 12 years old, and they basically trained at sea to become officers. They were taught to do all of the things that normal, able-bodied seamen were able to do, to splice, to knot, to be able to furl sails, climb up the rat lines to the top of the masts and all of that. But they were also taught to navigate, how to use a quadrant, how to find latitude and later on longitude, and then of course how to command, how to work the guns, and so forth. And they learned this all at sea. Later on, when Jane Austen's brothers joined the Navy, there actually is a naval academy that you can go to, and they do both go to it. But it's kind of looked down upon. Still, the preferred way of learning to be an officer is to actually go to sea. So this is what William has been doing for the last many years. You had to be a midshipman, or a young gentleman as they were often called, for at least 6 years, 2 of which you were mustered as a midshipman. And after that time, you could take a test that was actually called a lieutenant's passing examination, and it was an oral test, so you would effectively apply to take it, and you would have to bring in recommendations from all the captains you had served under, and it was an oral exam, and you would take the oral exam and they would read your various references and see what you had done, and then at that time, if you passed, you would be eligible to be a lieutenant. But you wouldn't be a lieutenant. It just meant that you were eligible. So William has been at sea for a long time. He's been in many battles, as you can see from the descriptions of how Henry admires all of the things that he's done during the Napoleonic Sea Wars, which are what is going on during this time. And he's waiting for his commission. He's waiting for a spot to be opened and for him to have either performed in some way that brings him to the notice of those who actually decide to promote, or to have people with influence write to more important people of influence, such as admirals or the Navy Board, and to get promoted in that way. Midshipmen tended to obsess on making lieutenant. You had to make lieutenant or you were not going to go anywhere. You were going to be a midshipman effectively for the rest of your time in the Navy, and clearly William is obsessed with it. He's done quite well at sea, but he does not have the kind of interest, they would have called it, today we would have called it networking or influence, to somehow get the word up to the higher levels that he's someone worth promoting. So he's a bit unhappy about that, and of course he says that even the girls won't dance with him at Portsmouth because he's not a lieutenant yet. This is absolutely standard. Midshipmen obsessed on becoming lieutenants. So he's waiting, he's hoping. And then once you do become a lieutenant, that does not mean you get a ship or you get placed on a ship. There were more lieutenants than there were places on ships. So often you'd be made lieutenant, but you'd still only be on half pay, and you would not be on full pay until you actually were put on a ship where you could serve. So this is his situation when he comes to Mansfield Park. The other side of William, of course, is that he's a very bright, energetic young man who's quite blunt in what he says. There's no sort of prevarication or subtlety about him. and he's been in battle. He's seen the world, and I really mean seen the world. He's been all over the place. And Fanny's response is really, some of you mentioned this, it's really over the top. There's almost a sense that she and her brother are having a romantic relationship if you read the lines closely. It kind of goes along with what I would call the submerged and really only symbolic incest theme that we've had since the beginning of the book because of Edmund and Fanny, but this kind of expands it to William. At the same time, as Fanny is kind of falling in love with William, Henry is falling in love not only with William, because he sees William as this young hero who is so much more worthy than a snake like Henry will ever be, but he also is falling in love with Fanny because he's watching how Fanny reacts to William and thinking, wow, this is what she's like when she's in love. So in any case, that's just a very short synopsis, I guess, of William's character, and I hope that explains to you what happens, at least with Midshipman trying to make lieutenant. Now, when we move over to persuasion, we'll go up the ranks from lieutenant to commander, from commander to post-captain, and so forth, and I will explain more about the naval system of promotion then. But basically, William is waiting for a break. He's waiting for someone or something to happen that brings him to the attention of those who are able to then promote him. He's eligible because he's passed his exam, but there's nothing he can do except behave heroically in battle or have someone write a letter to the right person that's going to get him promoted.